On June 25th, the Hebrew calendar turns a page that most Christians have never been taught to read. A new month begins, Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month, the moment in the Jewish liturgical calendar when the new moon is sighted and a new season of the year officially opens. The month is called Tammuz. And I want to tell you something important before I tell you what observant Jewish families actually do in its first 48 hours, because the honest context matters more here than in almost any other teaching I have given on this channel. Tammuz is not, in the Jewish tradition, a month of celebration. It is not the season of joyful new beginnings, the way Nisan is at Passover or Tishrei is at the high holy days. Tammuz carries weight, historical weight. The 17th day of this month is a fast day in Jewish observance, the day traditionally associated with the shattering of the first set of tablets at Sinai, the day the golden calf was worshipped while Moses was still on the mountain, and according to ancient tradition, near the time when the 12 spies returned from scouting the Promised Land with a report so fear-driven that an entire generation was kept from entering the inheritance God had already promised them. Tammuz, in other words, is a month the Jewish tradition has long treated with sober caution rather than celebratory expectation. And that is exactly why I want to teach on it today, because the financial wisdom embedded in how observant families approach this specific month, the wisdom of caution, of examination, of guarding what has been built rather than recklessly launching what has not, is some of the most underused financial wisdom in the entire biblical tradition. Most of what I teach on this channel is about activation, about stepping forward in faith, about claiming promises, about taking the challenge God issues. Today is about something different and equally necessary. Today is about the wisdom of the watch. Welcome, I am the Millionaire Priest, and today we are going inside the Hebrew month of Tammuz, what it means, what observant families do as it begins, and the financial wisdom hidden inside a month most people have never been taught to take seriously. Let me start with what actually happens in the first hours of Rosh Chodesh Tammuz in an observant Jewish household, because the practices themselves, even before we get to the deeper financial lesson, carry instruction. The first practice is the sanctification of the new moon, Kiddush Levana. Traditionally performed within the first days after the new moon becomes visible, this is a blessing spoken outdoors under the night sky, looking at the thin crescent that marks the beginning of the month. The blessing includes the words, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh Chodashim. Blessed are you, Lord, who renews the months. The renewal language is significant. The moon itself, in Jewish theology, is a symbol of the capacity for renewal even after near total disappearance. It wanes to nothing and returns to fullness in a fixed, reliable cycle. The financial application is immediate. Every financial season that feels like it has waned to nothing is, in the architecture of God's covenant calendar, capable of the same renewal the moon demonstrates every month. The household that sanctifies the new moon at the start of Tammuz is making a declaration that applies directly to financial cycles, that contraction is not the end of the story, that what has diminished is designed to return, and that the discipline of marking this renewal monthly, rather than waiting for some distant future restoration, builds the muscle of hope that financial patience actually requires. The second practice is the recitation of Hallel and the special Rosh Chodesh additions to the daily prayers, specifically the Musaf service and the Ya'aleh V'Yavo insertion, a passage asking that the remembrance of the new month rise before God for deliverance, for goodness, for life, and for peace. What I want you to notice in this practice is the specific request being made at the start of every month, including this more sober one: deliverance, goodness, life, peace. The household is not waiting for a convenient season to ask for these things. It is asking for them precisely at the start of a month historically associated with caution and difficulty. The financial application, the discipline of declaring goodness and provision over a season before you know how that season will unfold, is one of the most powerful acts of faith available to a financial life. You do not wait until the month has proven itself favorable to ask God's blessing over it. You ask at the threshold, Rosh Chodesh, before the month has revealed anything. The third practice, and this is the one most directly relevant to the financial wisdom of Tammuz specifically, is the deliberate slowing of major decisions during what the tradition calls the period leading into the 3 weeks. Because 17 days after Tammuz begins, the fast of the 17th commemorates the breaking of the tablets, and from that day forward, through the month of Av, observant households enter a recognized period of communal mourning, restraint and caution, traditionally avoiding major celebrations, significant new ventures, and rash decisions until the mourning period concludes. What this means practically in the first 48 hours of Tammuz is that wise households are already beginning to orient themselves toward restraint rather than expansion, not paralysis, restraint, the deliberate choice to examine, to consolidate, to protect what has been built, rather than to launch, to overextend, or to make major irreversible commitments during a season. The tradition itself identifies as requiring more caution than usual. Now I want to connect this directly to the story that the tradition links to this very season, because I believe it contains the single most important financial lesson available in the entire Tammuz observance. According to ancient Jewish tradition, it was during this general period of the calendar that the 12 spies Moses sent into Canaan returned with their report. Numbers 13 records the mission. 12 men, one from each tribe, sent to scout the land that God had already promised to give Israel. They returned 40 days later, and 10 of the 12 gave a report driven entirely by fear. Numbers 13:31 through 33. We cannot attack these people. They are stronger than we are. The land they explored devours those living in it. The people we saw there are of great size. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Only 2 of the 12, Joshua and Caleb, gave a different report. Numbers 13:30. Caleb said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Same land, same evidence, same giants, same fortified cities, same objectively difficult circumstances. 2 completely different financial conclusions, and the consequence of believing the fear-driven report rather than the faith-driven one was catastrophic. An entire generation spent 40 years in the wilderness, never entering the inheritance that had already been promised, and was, according to the text, already entirely available to them. This is the financial wisdom of the Tammuz season. Not every cautious moment requires retreat. Not every season of restraint is a season of fear. The wisdom is in knowing the difference between the caution of wisdom, the deliberate slowing down to examine, to protect, to consolidate before the next phase of building, and the catastrophic caution of fear, which mistakes the same evidence the faithful spies saw and concludes the opposite thing entirely. 10 spies and 2 spies looked at the exact same fortified cities, the exact same giants, the exact same objectively difficult terrain. The difference between the generation that inherited the promise and the generation that wandered for 40 years was not the evidence. It was the report. It was the internal orientation each group brought to the same external facts. So what does this mean for the first 48 hours of Tammuz in your own financial life? I want to give you 4 specific practices, modeled on what observant households do, translated into the financial wisdom this particular season calls for. The first practice is the financial Kiddush Levana, the deliberate marked acknowledgement that any financial contraction you are currently experiencing is not final. Take a moment in the next 2 days, ideally outdoors, and speak this declaration: Father, You renew the months. You renew what has waned. Whatever in my financial life feels like it has diminished to nothing, I declare it is in your cycle of renewal, not in a permanent state of loss. This is not denial of difficulty. It is the same theological move the new moon blessing makes every month, the conscious refusal to interpret a waning season as a final season. The second practice is the financial Yale Viyavo, the specific dated request for deliverance, goodness, and peace over the next 30 days of your financial life, spoken now, before the month reveals what it will actually contain. Do not wait to see how the month goes before asking God's blessing over it. Ask at the threshold, today, this week, before Tammuz reveals its character. Declare what you are asking God to do within it. The third practice is the audit of restraint versus fear. This is the most important practice of the four, because it requires you to apply the lesson of the 12 spies directly to a decision you are currently facing. Is there a financial decision in front of you right now where you need to discern whether the hesitation you feel is the wisdom of restraint, the deliberate, faithful caution that protects what has been built before the next expansion, or the catastrophic caution of fear, which looks at evidence God has already addressed and concludes the inheritance is impossible to take? 10 spies and 2 spies. Same evidence, different report. Which report are you giving about your own financial situation right now? The fourth practice is the consolidation step. In the spirit of the season's traditional caution about major new ventures, use the first 48 hours of Tammuz not to launch something new, but to strengthen something already in motion. Pay down a specific amount of an existing debt. Organize a specific financial system that has been neglected. Repair a specific relationship that has financial implications. Complete one of the unfinished projects we discussed in an earlier teaching on this channel. The wisdom of this season is consolidation before the next expansion. Not because expansion is wrong, but because the household that has used a season of restraint to strengthen its foundation enters the next season of growth from a position of genuine readiness rather than borrowed momentum. I want to close with this. Every culture and every calendar contains seasons that feel difficult, contracted, and uncertain. The biblical and Jewish tradition does not pretend Tammuz is otherwise. It names the difficulty honestly, the broken tablets, the golden calf, the fearful report of the spies, and then builds a practice around it that neither denies the difficulty nor surrenders to it. The household that observes Tammuz wisely is neither pretending everything is fine, nor giving the report of the 10 frightened spies. It is doing what Joshua and Caleb did, looking honestly at the same difficult evidence everyone else is looking at, and choosing the report of faith rather than the report of fear. That choice, made in the first 48 hours of this specific season, is available to you regardless of your tradition, regardless of your current financial circumstances, and regardless of how difficult the giants in your particular land currently appear. Leave a comment below. Tell me whether you had heard of the month of Tammuz before this teaching. Tell me which report you are currently giving about your financial situation, the 10 spies report or the report of Joshua and Caleb. This community is built on honest conversations, and I raid everyone. If you are new here, welcome to the Millionaire Priest. Subscribe and hit the bell. Every week we go this deep at the place where faith and finances meet. And there is much more coming. May this season of Tammuz be a season of honest restraint rather than fearful retreat. May you give the report of Joshua and Caleb over your own financial land. May what has waned be renewed according to the pattern God built into the very calendar you are now entering. And may the consolidation of this season prepare you fully for the expansion that follows it. Amen.